students, welcome to today's session. Today we'll be talking about the concept of difference and inequality in tribal context. In this session, I'll attempt to describe the concept of inequality and difference among the tribal groups. I will talk about the differences that become a factor in creating inequality and about the discrimination of tribes in India while touching on the principle of equality at the same time. After listening to this session, you will be able to understand the concept of difference of equality, inequality, and difference among the tribals. You will come to know how differences become a factor in creating inequality in tribal context and analyze how above process produces discrimination of tribes in India. At the outset, let me explain to you that tribes in India are socially and culturally different from others, accommodating the tribal demands for cultural recognition and continuity within the Indian nation state has been a challenge to the government and civil society for almost 6 decades. Many unresolved issues in tribal identity and related problems can be better understood by studying these concepts and their practice. It is only by creatively using these concepts that tribal issues and problems can be understood and subsequently attempts could be made to resolve them. Now let us discuss the principle of equality. Equality is a foundational value of all modern societies. The principle that everybody should be treated legally equal regardless of their caste, religion, region, race or language is accepted by majority of the nations. The effectiveness of the implementation of this principle varies from nation to nation. Even those nations that do not grant equality to certain groups or sections of society would claim that their interpretation of the principle of equality is different from other interpretations and that they too adhere to the principle in their own way. No nation wants to say that they do not adhere to the principle of equality. It is also true that modern nation states are characterized by a great degree of diversity. And these diversities are often seen as a problematic issue. Equality, we can say that it means that everybody is treated in the same way, that is similar. While at the same time, diversity means that there are considerable, definite social and cultural differences among the population, often treating different types of individuals and community equally, that is similarly, would result in some communities being treated unfairly, which in turn violates the principle of equality. It is only the modern society that valued equality as a value and as a principle to organize societies. When we talk about traditional societies, they were characterized by social order based on hierarchy. Groups and individuals are placed in superior subordinate positions according to a set criteria. Talking about pre-modern India, the caste system, which divided the society into lower caste and higher caste, was based on the criteria of ritual purity and pollution. The upper caste were considered ritually purer than the lower caste and therefore placed above them in the social hierarchy. Now, when we talk about medieval Europe, what we see that they had a state system. The population was divided into three divisions: clergy, nobility, and commons. It can be argued that the idea of equality existed in a limited and nascent form even in these societies. Islam and Christianity did recognize the equality of its adherents before their one God. Even in Hinduism, with its hierarchical caste system, Scholars have identified a certain degree of equality for all, though otherworldly for all members, regardless of their present positions. Everybody had an equal opportunity to perform his or her karma, which satisfactorily performed would enable the person to get into a higher stage in his or her life. So, this was the philosophy of Hinduism. Moreover, there have been a number of social movements like the Bhakti movement in Hinduism, which challenged the supremacy of the Brahmins and got social equality for the lower caste. Such similar movements for greater equality are also found in Islamic and Christian history. But none of these movements were successful in making equality an organizing principle for medieval Hindu, Christian, and Islamic societies. In other words, we can say, while equality was recognized in a metaphysical sense, it was not seen as a principle to guide state policy and decision. Bhakti says that traditional Indian society is seen as an unusually hierarchical society. Structural inequality was also the mechanism which was used to manage different communities in a society. Not all traditional societies were as pluralistic as modern societies, but there were different communities which coexisted in one society. These communities had their place in the social structure and their interaction with others depended on their relative positions in the hierarchy. Furnivall is a scholar who describes the situation in a colonial society. He says each group holds its own religion, its own culture, its own ideas and ways. They meet only in the marketplace. Different sections of the community live side by side, but separately with the same unit. Thus, inequality between communities and differential treatment for some communities at the cost of others did not cause a major problem as these societies did not accept equality or democracy as a value. The role of the state was to maintain the social order. Thus, we can say it had a harmonic system of stratification in which the dominant values in society and the existing situation were congruent. Though pre modern societies were pluralistic with many communities coexisting, each of these communities had a particular position in the society which determined their rights and duties and how they interacted with the others. And social inequality was accepted as value and principle in pre modern societies. The role of the state was to preserve the social order rather than change it. Now, let us talk about equality in the modern period. The idea of equality, as all of us know, it evolved in Europe with the revolutions in France, England, and United States. The French Revolution and the American War of Independence were violent expressions of revolt against the traditional social order. French Revolution attacked and removed the privileges of the aristocracy and the clergy. And according to the new system, every individual was treated equally, and no one, regardless of his position in society, had special rights and privileges. Similarly, the American Constitution after the war included the Bill of Rights, which ensured equality to its citizens. It separated the church, that is religion, and state, that is government, mainly to avoid the government from discriminating its citizens because of their religion or denomination being different from the majority religion or denomination. So, the French Revolution and the American Constitution heralded a new period in history where equality was accepted as a fundamental principle. But it was only a beginning of a long process where the idea of equality got further clarified, expanded, and made part of state policy. Firstly, the idea of equality was seen here in a limited form, legal equality. and the abolition of privileges to certain privileged groups like the aristocracy. It did not say anything about existing equalities, which were reflected in the unequal social and economic condition of the people. Secondly, there were large sections of society that were excluded from the ambit of equal treatment. That is, women, slaves, colonized people, and outsiders. So they were excluded from the ambit of equal treatment. And these sections had to wait for many, many more years, or even we can say centuries, to be recognized as being worthy of equal and fair treatment. Women had to struggle till the early 20th century to get voting rights, and the Afro Americans became equal to their white compatriots only after the Civil War. Needless to say, discrimination of these sections continues to happen on a smaller scale in the society even after these monumental events. In the 19th and 20th century, there was an expansion in areas in which the principle of equality was applied. It was felt that inequality in the social and economic spheres of life should end or at least be reduced. Political and legal equality without social and economic equality was futile, and it was only when these important areas of an individual life are brought into the ambit of principle of equality that the ideal will be fully realized. Another important aspect of equality was the recognition of the need for special protection of minority groups. In this context, we need to understand the genocide of Armenians in Ottoman Empire and Jews during the World War II, which brought about the realization that communities as a whole are often discriminated as they belong to a particular religion or ethnic group. Thus, community-based discrimination need to be addressed. More recently, there are demands for equality and recognition to be given to sexual minorities to stop discrimination, which you can see also happening in our country. Equality as a policy was seen earlier as static, in the sense that the state's role was merely in ensuring legal equality. And this changed to a dynamic one in which the state took efforts in ensuring equality in opportunity, outcome, and conditions. The state formulates laws, policies, and programs to ensure that equality is reduced. The emergence of welfare state is an important outcome of this commitment. Thus, the concept of equality has changed and broadened to include new areas of life of individual and community. It increased the state responsibility in ensuring that equality as a principle works in the society. So, this explains how the concept of equality has changed over a period of time. Now, let us understand the definitions of equality. It is a very difficult task to define equality as a concept. Ernest Baker says that equality is a protean notion. It changes its shape and assumes new forms with a ready facility. Equality does not simply mean similar treatment to all. Treating unequally equally will be as much injustice as treating equals unequally. But then individuals possess different capacities and produce different outcomes. Another scholar, Harold Lasky, he says the purpose of society would be frustrated at the outset if the nature of a mathematician met with identical response with that of a bricklayer. So that is how they try to define equality. Hence, it would be wrong to relate equality with the same treatment for all. Baker describes the principle of equality and he says that just as each person, because he is a person, is free agent in the scheme of the state, so also each person, because he is a person, as all other persons, has an equal standing and counts equally as a legal factor under the scheme. Similarly, it means that whatever conditions are guaranteed to me in the form of rights shall also and to the same measure be guaranteed to others, and that whatever rights to others shall also be given to me. Thus, equality is only the basic condition that is provided to all. How they make use of it is up to them. Thus, the principle of equality gives the same starting point to all, but how everybody finishes depends on the individuals. Law is a giver of legal capacities and of legal capacities only, and that is to be realized and understood. Berkeley's dictum that all men have equal rights but not to equal things is applicable here. We can say that the principle of legalistic equality had limited impact in societies with a history of gross social inequality. For example, it would be unreasonable to expect two individuals from different social background to be treated equally. Say an individual who is raised in a privileged family with all facilities will be more meritorious than an individual raised in family with minimal or no facilities. So there should be a certain degree of equality of opportunity if the principle of equality has to be realized. So this was getting realized by people and the lawmakers, and that there should be a equal opportunity. So Harold Lasky gives a broader idea of equality, and he lists out few characteristics. One was to that no special privileges for any individual or group should be given. There should be equal opportunity for all, as it gives everybody opportunity to educate and equip himself or herself. Further, he or she can use the skills and talents to get the desired things in life. There should be equal access to social benefits for all and no restrictions based on any extraneous factors and absence of economic and social exploitation. According to this definition, the principle of equality should have not only legalistic equality but also equality of opportunity and equal access to social benefits. An even broader definition of equality then emerged, and Brian Turner, in his work Equality, he has given the following characteristics. First is fundamental equality of persons, equality of opportunity, then equality of conditions, where there is an attempt to make the conditions of life equal, and equality of outcome of results. The principle of equality includes equality of conditions and equality of outcomes. It is not enough that there is legal equality and equality of opportunity, but also equality in conditions in society and equality of outcomes or results. This has to be made note of, understood, or realized. Equality of outcomes is the achievement of a given set of positive circumstances for a particular group or category. Thus, various communities and groups in a society should not experience vast differences in their standard of living. The state should take proactive steps, including progressive taxation and other measures to redistribute the wealth in society. And after understanding all these definitions, what comes out is that there are different dimensions of equality. First is the political equality, economic equality, legal equality, and social equality. We need to understand equality from all these perspectives. Equality, as we've seen, is a widely accepted idea, yet inequality in different dimensions persists in all societies. When we talk about the United States of America, it has wide range of social inequalities in terms of income levels. Afro Americans on an average earn less than their white American counterparts. Similarly, when we see France, the birthplace of popular slogan equality, liberty, and fraternity, there the black Muslim migrants and their successive generations experience discrimination, even now, even today. Like in USA, their average income levels are much lesser than their white counterparts. Thus, we've discussed the dimensions of equality and how it differs in different countries. Now, let us move on to understand inequality and difference. Every society is divided into different categories based on a quality or set of qualities. Primitive communities, which were essentially large kinship groups, had minimal differentiation based on the criteria of sex and age. So that was the differentiation made. Modern communities have greater differentiation based on a number of criteria, that is income, race, ownership, sexual orientation, etc. In itself, these different categories do not reflect any hierarchy or any superior subordination relationship. They simply show that people can be grouped together on a common basis. They share some elements of their social and economic lives with others, and there are other people with whom they do not share these particular elements. For example, language can be criterion for grouping people. People who speak Hindi can be one group, and people who speak Bengali can be another. It is only a grouping of people who are different in one way or another. There is no hierarchy with one group being superior to another. Members of one group do not attain more power, prestige, or income simply because they belong to one group and not another. However, when differences are evaluated according to a set of qualities and then different groups are placed in a hierarchy, these differences become a basis for inequality. So, what we need to understand is only when it is grouped according to a particular hierarchy, these groups become unequal. Otherwise, they are different groups following different criteria. Consequently, there are groups that have a subordinate or superior relationship with other groups. Again, there will be a differential rewards and obligations attached to the groups occupying low or high positions. Groups which are placed higher than others enjoy greater prestige, power, income, privilege. They have easier access to things that are needed for a good quality of life. Not all social differences are valued according to the qualities that is set in a hierarchy. The type and nature of quality decided for valuation depends on the nature and type of society. For example, pre-modern societies valued aged population for their wisdom and experience, while modern societies neglect them by attributing negative qualities of lack of energy and low updation of knowledge, etc. So, how it is viewed has changed over a period of time. Many social differences are also ignored or not even seen as being worthy of notice. They may later on, in a different situation, become socially important. In USA, dark skin, black, was seen as ugly till the 1960s, when change in ideas of beauty altered and the concept of black is beautiful emerged. So, a change in social perspective had brought about a re evaluation of a quality which produced different results. Now, let us talk about social inequality and natural inequality. So, there are these two concepts we need to understand and also acknowledge that how social inequality is different from natural inequality. So, many of the criteria for judging a group's value and justifying social inequalities are thought to be found in nature. That is, there are biological differences. It is often argued that biological differences result in a biological inequality, and which in turn results in social inequalities. So, no one can deny that individuals are endowed with different natural abilities and capacities, and that there are differences. So, we will continue in the next session. Till then, see this video and see, maybe you can see it twice or thrice to understand it in a better way. So, see you in the next session.